This video is going to guide you on the import flow with the Intelliflo integration. To activate the integration, you need to come into the Intelliflo store, search for the Voyant connector app, and you need to install the app from Intelliflo to activate the integration. There's nothing that needs to be done from Voyant's side. So this is the way to activate the integration. Once you've downloaded or installed the app in the Intelliflo store, when you come back into Voyant and you're at your Open Client Record stage, if I click my plus button at the bottom right, you should then see an option to import clients. If I click into that, I will see the Intelligent Office beta integration available. When you first set up the integration from Voyant, you will have a little pop-up box appear on the left-hand side, just asking for your permission to connect the integration. And then you should be faced with this client search screen. You only need to type in a few letters of the last name. You don't need all those other details. Search for the client from Intelliflo, and now the integration starts to retrieve that data. So it pulls that data in from Intelliflo. So we've got the primary client as expected, secondary client, children and non-legal partners, and other person types also do pull across. I've just kept it simple for this video. When I go next, this screen now shows me all the data that's sitting in Intelliflo, and it's given me an option here to add or skip that data. Now, just a few little hints and tips when you are inputting the data in Intelliflo to make sure it pulls through nice and clearly on the import and easily identifiable. When you are setting up any plans, for example, always make sure you complete the product name. When you're setting up expenses in the plan, if I just pop to my budget screen here and go to my expenditure, make sure you have the description completed so that it's easily identifiable in Voyant. Also, just another little hint and tip, which I do see a lot of planners and advisors doing with regards to inputting cash in Intelliflo. I do see cash accounts being input here in the assets and liabilities screen. If I just click my little add button, and this happens when you're adding a plan and choosing the category type as cash. What happens when you put the cash under assets in Intelliflo, it will pull through into property in Voyant. So the way for that not to happen is to make sure that for any existing cash, you actually input it under investment and existing cash, and that will pull across appropriately into savings or current accounts into Voyant. Okay, so let's go through and have a look at what the flow looks like. Now, if you do use goals in Voyant, normally what I suggest is that you consider skipping your expenses on import. Often what can happen, it can look like an Excel spreadsheet with a whole list of expenses, and the most important thing is you aren't able to use goals in Voyant. And that's really where the power comes in, is to be able to model expenses as goals so we can track them. So that's the time where I do see the skip being used. So it is worth double checking all this data. If it's not looking correct, come back into Intelliflo, amend those little items like the product name or the description, and then come in and cancel and re-import the client again, so you've got the data correct. And it might just take a little bit of data cleansing initially, but think of it down the road. Okay, so you can see I've got some expenses, etc. in here. I'll just keep them in here for the purpose of the demo. And then if I come down to property, I've got some employment going on, I've got some stocks and shares ISA, some unit trusts, some other income in the plan. Final salaries, you will always see a zero value. I'll explain that in a second. And I've got some money purchases in the plan as well as some savings accounts. Once I'm happy with that data on the left hand side to come into Voyant, I simply click done. Now you will be faced with what I won't call them error messages, but it just will highlight these little sort of red notifications will highlight there's some data missing in Voyant that hasn't mapped across from Intelliflo. Most of the time it's related to pension and protection. Otherwise, you can see the rest of the data does pull through okay. Right, so when you click into the error message, if I click show details, it'll clearly tell me what's missing. So I've got some dividend income come across, so that's great. It's brought over the right taxation type, but I need to complete how long this dividend is coming into Voyant, this dividend income. So I'm just going to simply click here and click done to add the timing. Here as well, in terms of the income that I'm receiving against this property, I just need to tell Voyant when that's happening because we don't bring over the events from Intelliflo. But these little error messages really shouldn't take you too long. Final salary schemes, right. There isn't a field in Intelliflo where I can actually enter a deferred scheme. So it does come across as active. So simply I would change the deferred figure in, the status, sorry, and put the amount in. Obviously check all the other various things like if there's going to be an escalation, if there's a survivor percent. When you're entering final salaries in Voyant, make sure you always have your normal retirement age matching your timing. Otherwise, this actual reduction will apply if you take the pension before that NRA. So I'm just going to go to my timing and double click into the chart at 55 for Kai. Click done to that. And the same will be happening on the other final salary schemes. Okay, so make sure you have all these details completed. If there is a PCLS, make sure you complete it here as a declared amount when you're inputting deferred final salaries. And if I just go to my timing, and again, this is also occurring at this age for the purpose of the video. Okay, so once all that data has now been imported, the plan is drawn in Voyant. Always go and check what's imported has worked as expected. So if I click into my income tab, I can see the items imported by this little icon over here. And again, just check those details are all correct against the data that's sitting in Intelliflo. But you can see here, I've got some common investment accounts that have pulled through. We've got our property pulled through. We've got some pensions in the plan. I would be adding my state pension at this stage because I haven't brought that across from Intelliflo. And I've got my mortgage against my main residence. Now, as you may know in Voyant, when you do have a mortgage and a debt, always remember to link the two together. So that hasn't happened from Intelliflo, so I'll just come into my linked debt, link to an existing debt, and click done to that. Okay, so that covers the import journey. And when you have imported the client, if we were coming to review time, for example, and we wanted to now bring over some updated valuations from Intelliflo, I'm just going to go through that update journey in this video there will be the merge and export covered in separate videos. But for now, let's go into, first of all, let's have a look at some valuations here. So if we go to Willow's unwrapped investment at 450, so at review time, you've come back from the meeting and updated all the details in Intelligent Office. If I just go to Willow's plans and click into her collective investment account. So I'm just going to change the valuation manually. I obviously don't have access to electronic valuations. And let's just put in the value. It's come down a bit to 250. And click add to that. So any valuations that I change in IO of previously imported items into Voyant, what will happen now is when I click my plus button on the bottom right, you can see I've got this update option. So I'm going to click update. So again, it's going back to Intelliflo to pull this data. It just gives a little summary check. We don't bring over the events. Now, I've got no new finances. I haven't added any new policies, but if I did, they would appear here in the top section. This bottom section is all my previously imported items. So if I scroll down, what I expect to see is there's been a change to that collective investment account. So here is where you would see any update changes in terms of the valuations being pulled across. Indeed, if it was going down, up, I would see a nice little green arrow going through. You will see these fluctuations coming through on final salary schemes. It actually doesn't change anything in the software. This is just something we are working on. It brings through a payment amount from Intelliflo, but it doesn't actually change the value within Voyant. So just be aware of that. Okay, so once I'm happy with those previously updated items, again, it gives me another checklist. I click done. So what I should see now is that amended value against that particular account. Okay, so I hope that's given you a good overview of what the import looks like. Of course, I've kept it fairly simple. If you do find certain plans not coming over, please do get in contact with me. Thank you very much.